Hello, I want to look at 4 ways that you can increase your bottom line profit and then compare which ones would be easiest to implement and then show you what the results of that could be. So the starting point is to know your volume. So here we've got 1,000 things that we sell. Now that could be goods or it could be units of a service that you provide. We need to know the average price, which is 300 here. So that would tell us that our revenue, starting revenue, is 300,000. Cost of goods sold. So that's the variable cost of supplying whatever it is we supply. So that could be goods and materials and labor costs if it's items that we sell. It could be sort of room hire costs and equipment rentals, etc. If it's a service we provide, or it could be consumables, or it could be your charge out time. But basically, whatever the direct costs are involved in supplying this thing, that's the cost of goods sold. And the difference between the two is called our gross profit. And the gross margin is how much the gross profit is as a percentage of our revenue. So here, the gross profit is 40% of our revenue. So the gross margin is 40%, which means that our cost of goods sold are the other 60%. We then need to know, once we know our gross profit, we need to know what our overheads are. So that's our fixed costs. So that's things like rent, rates, wages, salaries, depreciation, other things, depending on how your accounting works and when you include them. But they're all fixed costs. So we take off our fixed costs and that will tell us what our operating profit is. And our operating profit is basically how much profit we make on our ordinary activities, if you like, before we do things like pay interest costs, etc. So it's how much we're actually making doing what we do. Now, there's 4 things you can work on there from those numbers. You can work on selling more volume. You could work on increasing the average price you get per transaction. You could work on reducing your costs, your direct costs here, and you could work on reducing your overheads. Now, the thing is, in order of difficulty, I would suggest it's difficult to reduce your overheads, particularly in the current climate, particularly if you're looking at wages and salaries as well, of course. So reducing overheads isn't easy. Reducing cost of goods sold. Well, you could work on doing deals with suppliers. You could work on having more optimum stock levels, reducing the lines you deal with, reducing the number of people you deal with, becoming more efficient, getting rid of cards and deals and software packages that you don't use. So there is scope for looking at reducing cost of goods sold. But again, there's probably only limited scope. In terms of volume, there's lots of things you can do to increase your volume. You can have regular offers, you can have regular communications, you can have better follow-up, better funnels, marketing funnels and sales conversion funnels. So there's lots you can do in terms of increasing volume, lots of which most people don't do. And similarly with increasing your average price, you can have a gold, silver, bronze offering, you can have bundling in value rather than discounting. Again, there's lots of ideas to work on those 2 things. So the question then is, if you were to make a 5% improvement in any of those areas, what effect could it have? Well, if you made a 5% improvement in your volume, you would add 6,000 to your bottom line here, from 60,000 up to 66,000, which is a 10% improvement. If you were to increase your price on average by 5%, what happens now is, because you've increased your price by 5%, you've got 2 effects working. 1, you've got more revenue, and 2, you're actually making more profit on that revenue because you've increased your gross margin, because the difference between the cost of what you're selling and the price is higher. So that has a bigger effect. That would increase your bottom line by 25%. If you can reduce your cost of goods sold by 5%, which I've said is possible, but not that easy, that will improve your revenue, your profit by 9,000, which is a 15% increase. And if you could reduce your overheads by 5%, that will give you an extra 3,000 on your bottom line, which is only actually a 5% saving. So you can see that the most difficult one to implement is reducing your overheads, and that has the least effect. Volume and price are the 2 easiest to implement, if you like, for most businesses. And I suppose the cost of goods sold has a significant effect, but again, maybe that's not easy. But these 2 between them can have quite a lot of effect. Now, then the question is, what if you could make a 5% improvement in all 4? Now, if you think about it, 5% in all 4, say you did it over 6 months, that's less than, that's 20%. So that's less than 1% a week in one of those key areas per week over 6 months. So if you spent an hour or 2 hours a week set aside working on finding a 1% improvement a week, you would easily hit these 5% figures. And if you did 5% on each of the 4, you would actually end up with an extra 57% on your bottom line. It would increase your profit by over 50%. And that's less than 1% a week if you set the time aside to work on it over, well, less than a 6-month period, actually. But even if you did it over 6 months, you'd get that or more. So I think the upshot or the summary is that it's the easiest thing to do is probably to increase your average price. Second easiest thing is probably to sell more. And again, there's lots of strategies to do that. And you're not looking for huge increases in either. The third easiest is then probably to look at stock levels, margins, deals with suppliers, rationalizing and reducing who you deal with, looking at your energy costs. Nice one. You know, there's lots of scope for looking at your cost of goods sold, but it's probably not as easy as the other two. And then reducing overheads, well, you know, that's great, but that's probably, I'm not saying it can't be done, and there are people out there who specialize, but you know, that's probably not as easy as some of the other areas. So there you have it. 4 main ways to add to your bottom line. A 5% improvement in all 4 key areas, only 5%, makes a huge difference to your bottom line. So I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you'll go ahead and actually have a go at doing that. If you want any more information, have a look at bernardkeavy.com. There's some resources on there. And also there's a free offer of a profit accelerator analysis. So I can actually look at your numbers for you and show you where you could actually make those improvements. Thank you very much for watching today.